missions in this area than they were out in East Texas. And that's because the situation with the native people they were encountering was much different. Instead of a vast, sophisticated society, the Caddos, here in this area, they're encountering groups that are in smaller, largely family-based groups, and they're not practicing agriculture. They're living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. So they're very mobile. They travel with the seasons. They, depending on the season, will sometimes form joint encampments with other family groups. But we're not talking about a large, sophisticated society that's mostly sedentary. We're talking about family-based groups, 15 to 50 people sometimes. So they're not a large tribe. We usually call them bands or groups. And here, the Spanish had something that they could offer that these people thought was valuable. Instead of just, hey, we're here to save your souls, sounds good to them, right? But sounds good to the Spanish. I think that's the best deal that they could give. However, there's safety in numbers. And again, context is really important here because I mentioned the Apache and the Comanche earlier on as some of these really powerful tribes in this area, and they pose a threat to these small family-based groups. They are not mounted family groups. They do not have horses. So they're on foot, they travel with the seasons, and they want to stay away from the Apache and the Comanche because they are mounted and warrior nations, and they could capture or kill these family-based groups. So these mission communities, these joint encampments, were alliances, as scholars now believe the native people likely viewed this as, right? Instead of, oh, you want to save my soul? That sounds great, let's do it. Was you have something valuable, which is weapons and people, right? There's safety in numbers. We can form an alliance and have a joint encampment here and all together be safer. And the Spanish, again, are offering their form of agriculture to a group that is not already practicing agriculture. So there's a sense of food security in joining these encampments, these missions, right? So the Spanish are like, okay, this is great, we're saving souls, this is what we came here to do. We also came here to set up Spanish towns so that when the French show up, they're like, people are speaking Spanish here. Oh no, we've been beaten. There's already the Spanish here. And so their motive is to build the Spanish nation, the Spanish Empire, and right, you can also exclude the French, but also they're sending missionaries. They're not just sending a bunch of families to go live in Texas. You'll love it, it's great. No families wanted to come and live here because it was known to be very dangerous. So they're sending Franciscan friars, Catholic Franciscan friars, often with what they could carry on their back and their wits. So they're mostly using persuasion. They're trying to make contact, learn the languages of these people, and convince them, hey, we could be better together. Now, we've got a language barrier and a cultural barrier, right? We all see and interpret and understand things through the lens of our own experience, and the Spanish and the native people here are very different. So especially in those early years, what each understood the other was saying was probably not always they might have thought they were communicating, but perhaps sometimes there was some misunderstandings. However, the important thing to know is that 300 years ago, the Spanish came here. They came with their own motives, and the native people agreed to join these encampments for their own benefit. So a lot of time people ask, were they forced to come here? Were they enslaved here? Especially in the beginning? No, these are formed as mutually beneficial alliances. And how much the native people understood what Spain really wanted from them. They wanted them to stay here and live here and be Catholic and learn the Spanish language, become a Spanish citizen. It's not always clear. And based on some of the Spanish primary documents and writing, a lot of the time, that's not exactly how it went. I mentioned that these are people that are hunter-gatherers, and they're used to traveling with the seasons. So when the weather starts to change, when they sense that the seasons are changing, like, oh, it's time to move. We're leaving this area. And the priests were like, wait, no, what are you doing? They're abandoning the mission. We have to go get them. However, they were just following their their usual patterns. This is like, okay, well, we agreed to have this mutual encampment here, but we didn't agree to stay here forever. Calm down. So for a long time, in the beginning of these missions, the constant is the Spaniards, but the people who are living here and cycling through the missions change over time, partially because they're continuing their movement, their seasonal movement, and also because we still haven't gotten rid of that problem of disease. The Spanish are still giving smallpox and measles, and epidemics break out about every decade, sometimes more often. And so it takes a long time for our mission to stabilize and for birth rates to replace death rates. But especially in the beginning, we're joining the mission, we're joining together for safety and for food security, but for some different reasons, right? The Spanish have their own idea, and the Native people have their own idea about what they're doing together here at these missions in the early years. Okay, I've talked a lot because I think that context is really important to understanding what happened here in these mission spaces. And now we'll get to move. Let's go see the space. If you have any questions as we go, please feel free. I'd like to explore with you today some of that cultural barriers, those misunderstandings, and how the Spanish attempted to mold or change the Native people to be more like themselves. Right? The Spanish think they're the epitome of civilization, everybody. Want to civilize everybody else to be just like them. And we're going to do that through the lens of your daily life, your daily work here in the missions, and your living spaces. So the first living space we're going to check out is, if you look around us, you may have noticed already, there's doors running all the way around this wall. Of course, the walls were not the first thing that was here when this was formed 300 years ago, the community itself. They started with very simple structures, but the wall would have been priority because they want to protect their new community and new joint alliance from the Apache and the Comanche. And so the walls are super important, but the doors around us, which were eventually added, are living spaces for the Native people. Because again, even though Spain and the Spanish friars and the Native people were here for different reasons and understood this mutual mission agreement differently, Spain was still directing how things were going to be built, and they built their idea of the hierarchy here into these spaces. So, welcome to the Spanish Empire. Thank you for joining us. You're on the lowest rung of the hierarchy here. Oh, great. Sorry. So we're going to build these little apartments. So these two doors to the left are about the size of a Native apartment that you would share with your family. So as you walk in, I want you to imagine sharing this living space with your whole family. So over in the corner, you can also take a look inside. There is the bastion. That is the defensive structure. Again, defense is going to be a very important part of these missions. We have to defend. We've got gun forts, the holes. And there would be gun forts out of some of the Native quarters as well. I'm sorry? Correct. Yes. So the Apache and the Comanche are the tribe. Yeah. So we've got different words to refer to them. Absolutely. So American Indians, Native Americans, Indigenous. So the families.